All right, Russ, you're now live.
All right, great. Thank you. All right, so thank you everyone for tuning in. And thank you, Julian, for arranging this meeting for us. I want to ask you now to please sort of give everybody the rules of the road, although probably most people are Zoom veterans at this point, but if you could walk us through the procedures.
Absolutely. So everyone, hi. Our big Russ is going to get a little more informal than most Zoom meetings are going to be. So you're all welcome to turn your cameras on. Excuse my bloodhound howling in the background. You can hear that. I ask that everyone stay muted unless you are speaking. If you suddenly find yourself muted, it is because I most likely muted you because I can hear something. One of the things we're going to do, so Ross has said that if you guys want to ask questions throughout, you're more than welcome to. Simply please raise your hand. You can also use the little digital hand. It's going to be a little easier for us to identify you, though, by the just, a simple hand. Marianne will be kind of keeping an eye out for everyone as well. But anything else you want to say? Oh, the other thing is, when you speak, just please say who you are. Right now we're at 43 people on here, so names are getting small, so just be nice to identify yourself before you speak your piece. And that's all I really have. So have a great town hall.
And for those of you who don't know and don't recognize the last name, Marianne is my beloved sister, one of 4 sisters that I have, and not one of my 3 brothers. So I'm going to start with some general remarks. Want to talk a little bit about the city budget, go into some city development issues, talk about public safety. I'm going to try to keep my comments to a minimum to leave plenty of time for your questions and comments and issues. So with no further ado, I want to launch right into a very important issue and one that I get a lot of questions about, particularly when Monday is a holiday. So trash collection. Trash collection is the same day as always throughout the year, unless Christmas or New Year's or 4th of July fall on a Monday. And then you get moved to the next day from your usual collection. But the rule I give everybody is, if in doubt, put it out. You'll be sure to get it collected then. So unless there's questions on that, I want to move. Julian, could you show the little fact sheet on vaccinations? This is a very summarized set of information that was current as of yesterday about the rollout. We're now in 1B. Anne Arundel County is going to be expanding the group immediately to education, which I say, yes, we need to get our teachers protected. And that's not just because my sister Marianne is a teacher. And then the county is going to be expanding their vaccination sites as quickly as they can. We're going to hope to move very quickly from 1B to 1C, and the drive is to get everybody vaccinated as soon as possible. And that drive comes right from the president on down. So let's get that down, Julian. Unless there's questions, I want to move to the next topic, which is 2 budget years. The current budget year is fiscal 21. We had for many months a concern that we were headed for a deficit, primarily because of COVID and the impacts of COVID. But at the recent Financial Advisory Commission, our finance director was able to tell us that we are now in balance, or we are projected to be in balance. One of the big factors there is our staff, because of COVID, are not using a lot of healthcare. So we're ahead of the game there. We're getting some help from the CARES dollars, and our departments are not spending as much as we've budgeted them for, I think mainly at the request of the city manager. And that's particularly in fire and police, but also public works. That's the good picture for fiscal 21. Fiscal 22, is not looking as rosy. Right now, we're looking at spending and revenues continue as projected. We're looking at a deficit or a shortfall of almost $10 million. We're going to be starting the budget exercises. The departments are already developing their budgets, and they will be working on that during the beginning of the year. The mayor needs to give us his budget, the first meeting in April, and then the finance committee takes it over in the city council. But the situation looks like there can be effects on staff pay and even numbers of staff, potentially furloughs. All of those things come with that, reductions in service. So it's going to be a challenging year. The one thing that everybody so far seems to be consistent on is that we are not going to raise the tax rate. We'll see.
Yeah.
Yes.
It looks like Elvia has her hand up. She may have a question for you.
Okay, I can't see Elvia, but Elvia, please go ahead.
Unmute Elvia and go ahead if you have a question.
I see Elvia, you're still muted.
Sorry about that.
Yep.
So I read today that our state delegation is going to go after the pilot money,
Yes,
the $750,000. So was that figured into the budget?
the 750 was figured into the budget for this year and for next year, but the governor has not been generous with us, and so he's cut us in half for this year, and his budget as submitted cuts us in half again for the coming fiscal year. That's frustrating, and I think it's short-sighted. We certainly provide a lot of services because we are the capital city, but and I hope that Sarah and Shanika are going to be good advocates for us, but we have not prevailed with the governor in the past, so we'll see. And of course, they're facing problems at the state level, just like we are at the city level. So if there's no more questions, I want to move into city development. And the first thing I want to do is to turn the agenda over to Jackie Giles, our deputy city manager, and she wants to give us a short presentation and ask us for some input on the work going on at Hawkins Coves.
Ross, this is Carolyn Richards. I do have a question on the budget.
Yes. Yes.
There has been talk about closing the Esports Volunteer Fire Department. Is that still on the table?
As far as I know, it has never been on the table, but we don't know what we're going to have to do. I think we're talking more about reductions in staff than we are in closing functions or closing facilities.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Ross, it's Ellie.
Yes.
I just want you to reiterate that we are not raising taxes. I just want you to be clear about that, because there was a quick back and forth where you said yes, and I just want to make sure everybody understands that there's no intention of raising taxes.
Well, the operative word there is there's no intention, and it's certainly not our druthers. And those who want to see the tax rate stay the same can be comforted by the fact that this is an election year, and nobody wants to go out on that limb in an election year. So I think it's a pretty safe bet that there won't be a tax rate increase. That, by the way, does not say anything, and I'm looking at Debbie Dillon's picture on the screen. I suspect that we will take the constant yield, which is the difference between the tax rate that we currently have in effect and what we would reduce it to keep a constant yield of property tax revenue. And I'm not going to explain constant yield in this meeting, but I do want everyone to know that it is something that I'm raising at the Finance Committee, and I think that we need to let people know early on that there is not a plan to reduce the tax rate to keep constant yield. And that makes up about $1.5 million.
So Ross, that date, you haven't decided yet, city hasn't decided when they're going to release that information?
Well,
Notice to be given to the public?
I can't speak for the city. I can tell you, I've decided when we're releasing it, and that is that I've just said that is in the current budget is to not go to the constant yield rate, to keep the current tax rate. I doubt that there's going to be much enthusiasm for lowering the tax rate, which would make our budget deficit more like $12 million rather than $10 million. So.
No, I understand that. The issue is timing, right? So people need to have notice. That's the whole intent of constant yield, right? Is to inform people. So the problem is that the notice was given so late to taxpayers that you're so far down the budget path at that point, there's really no way to pull back. So my only suggestion is that instead of waiting to April or May, or I don't recall the exact date that notice went out.
First Monday, the second Monday, first council meeting in April is when the mayor makes his budget published. And that would be probably the earliest time that there would be opportunity for a formal announcement. But I'm keeping an eye on for it.
Thanks.
All right. So, Jackie, did you want to tell us about what's going on at Hawkins Cove?
Yes, thank you, Ross, for providing some
Jackie,
time
I'm
for
so
that.
sorry.
Whoop.
Before you continue, it looks like Kevin Richards had another question as well. I didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. Kevin, you're not
Sorry,
on
Jackie.
my screen. Kevin?
It's on mute. I think.
No, you're on mute.
That may be left over from earlier.
Okay.
All right. Going once, going twice. Jackie, you're on.
Okay, thank you very much, Russ, for giving me some time tonight. I'm joined tonight from the city by Will Rowell, who is the Senior Advisor to the Mayor for Public Engagement and Community Relations. Will and I know that some other city staff are collaborating on the community outreach piece of the work we're contemplating for Hawkins Cove. So why are we talking about Hawkins Cove tonight? Because the city is exploring different options for restoration at Hawkins Cove. And as part of that, we want to inform our decision by performing several community listening sessions. We will be developing a formal presentation and having listening sessions in the next couple of weeks. But when I found out about Ross's town hall tonight, I asked if we could have a little bit of time to do a preliminary presentation so we could use this opportunity to get some of your feedback on what we're considering. So thank you, Ross, for that. What I would like to do is describe where and what Hawkins Cove is for those of you who don't know, and then describe its current conditions and current uses, then go into options the city is considering, and leave the remainder of the time, the bulk of the time, for you to let Will and I know what you would like to see happen at Hawkins Cove, how you would like to use it, and any concerns, questions, ideas that you have. So Julian's pulled up the map of Hawkins Cove for us to give you a visual of where it's located. It's a small cove off of Spa Creek. And Julian, if you can move the cursor to the tip of it where the headwaters are, give us a better idea. And it's next to Truxton Park. It's right across the road to the left. To the left it's abutted by the Spa Cove apartments. To the right and up a steep hill are the Shearwater condominiums, and directly behind it are the HACA headquarters, and the Harbor House Eastport Terrace communities are abutting Hawkins Cove as well. So there's about 30 communities, as you can tell, is densely populated area that drained Hawkins Cove. It's a 93-acre watershed to a very small cove, heavily urbanized. All sorts of stormwater runoff are going there. So we have a great deal of sediment. If you've been down there, you can see it's like a mud flat. There's a dock area. Julian, if you can bring up the pictures of Hawkins Cove in its current condition. So there's a bulkhead that's starting to fall apart there. You can see some old posts that were used for boats in the past. In the next slide, Julian. And there's a dock there. The dock is, you can see the last board from this picture is rotted out. It's bent. It's not really a safe or usable dock. Of course, you can't actually bring a boat in there anymore because you can see this heavy sedimentation there. And next picture. You get a little bit better picture of the dock, how it's sloping and falling apart. And you're looking out away from the shoreline. And I believe there's one more shot of the shoreline. Maybe not. Maybe go back to the picture of the bulkhead. Yeah, there. And so behind the bulkhead, you can see that's the land area of the Hawkins Cove. And it's covered pretty much in vines, invasive plants, bushes, and some trash and debris. It's neither an inviting nor aesthetically pleasing area. It has a lot of potential and a lot of potential uses, but in its current condition, it's neither inviting to use, it's not healthy, the water is not healthy, the dock area and the muddy area are not safe for people to go wading in, and it's not conducive to boating or fishing or any other use at present. We'd like to change that. So what the city is exploring right now is a restoration of Hawkins Cove. And so we're looking at the shoreline itself, buffering it from wave action and further erosion at that site, and with a vegetative buffer. Well, that could be a living shoreline, and it could be something like a living shoreline or a partial living shoreline, which would incorporate woody material and sand and stone and native plants to recreate what the shoreline would have looked like originally. And it provides ecological uplift, it provides habitat for fish and other wildlife. As it grows in, the plants start to hold the shoreline together. They filter sediment and pollutants that would otherwise get into the water. So you end up with less sediment in Hawkins Cove, cleaner water, and habitat for animals and fish that start to come back. Upstream of Hawkins Cove, there is a deeply incised channel of the tributary to Hawkins Cove. Several years ago, there was a project spearheaded by the Spa Creek Conservancy, which addressed that channel and put in a step pool conveyance system to slow down the stormwater, let it seep into the ground, and trap some of the pollutants and sediment that would otherwise end up in in Hawkins Cove. That is in need of some maintenance and repair. That work that Spa Creek Conservancy did, in addition to the restoration work, the larger scale restoration work we would like to do in Spa Cove. Currently, Spa Cove is pretty much just used as a byway for people traveling from Eastport that want to get over to Truxton Park, and no one really stops there and lingers in using it because it's not very inviting currently for any sort of use. So what the city is doing first, before we decide exactly what should be done at Hawkins Cove to restore it, is a number of these community listening sessions so that we can get community input from how you would like to use Spa Cove, what you would like it to look like and how to use it. And then that will feed our decisions on what type of project we put there. Some type of potential uses, just to throw out some ideas for you, or is it a picnic area or just benches so you can sit and eat your lunch, look at the water, putting in a new dock, a floating dock or some other type of dock, so people can walk out to the water, maybe go wading, fishing. There could be potential for small craft launches of kayaks and canoes, paddle boards in that area. We may have to do some dredging as well to restore it to the uses we want to be able to achieve. And there could be some other shore type of activities, such as a volleyball net. People have thrown out bocce ball courts. It's kind of up to you to tell us what you want, and we can see what's feasible there. and then pursue funding to make it happen. So with that said, I would like to open it up for questions and ideas at this point.
Sally, was that a hand? Yes.
It's muffled.
It's hard to get mute off.
Muffled.
How do I raise my hand?
You need to, can you turn your mute on and turn your mute off? There you go.
There you go.
Yeah. Now we can hear you. No, we can't.
Her volume is down.
No, it seems like Sally might be having some connecting issues there.
Yeah.
Can you turn your volume up?
No, there's no real way to turn the volume up. It seems it's not acknowledging her microphone right now.
Hey, Ross, while we're waiting for Sally to be able to sign on, can I ask a quick question?
Certainly.
Hi, this is Diane Butler. So I know the mayor is very adamant about public water access at SAYC as well as Wells Cove. You know, is this being proposed as an alternative to making sure we preserve public water access at South Annapolis Yacht Center as well as Wells Cove? Or in
No.
conjunction?
No, it is not an alternative to any other project or public access.
That's helpful. So, but it's clear that you're not giving up on that, even though we've been promised one thing and getting another.
No, I'm not giving up on it.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Why don't we go to Lynn next? I see that hand up.
And then Terry Lomax.
And then Terry Lomax, right.
Myself, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Lynn.
Okay. I'm a resident of Shearwater, so I was wondering if at some point in the presentation, if you could let me know who should be contacted for listening sessions, because we do have a project in back of two of our buildings that abut Hawkins Cove, and they're talking about possibly a living shoreline there. I don't know with whom they've spoken at the city, but it seems that since there's so much work being thought of for Hawkins Cove, that it might be good to coordinate efforts.
This is the same project. And I know that Racing Hodo from my office has spoke with people at Shearwater condos. Julian, can you bring up my contact information on the screen?
Yeah, hang on one second.
Yeah. So I'm the lead in the city for this project. So you can send your comments or questions, contact me. Julian's going to put up my email and my phone number information on the screen while we take questions.
Well, I could probably just send an email to the person who's coordinating it for our two buildings on Hawkins Cove and copy you. And then they can talk to you after that. I'm trying to stay out of it myself.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So while we're waiting for that, Sally Lockley, are you back with us?
I am.
Yes,
now
good.
Perry, because I didn't change the name again. So I know that there's a lot of paths right at the end of that Hawkins Cove area that a lot of people here on our side will walk across to get to Truxton. Would this project help or hinder or make sure that that is still a public passageway through to Truxton?
It's intended to be, the project is intended to be in conjunction with the access over to Truxton Park.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Terry?
Yes, Jackie, this is Terry Lomax. I chair the Maritime Advisory Board for the city. And could you come to one of our meetings as you move forward to this and give the board an update as you've been doing here, or maybe when you get a little farther along? We meet the third Tuesday of the month at 7 o'clock, and obviously there are going to be virtual meetings. But we try to stay on top of the various street end parks and street and water access from public properties. So because there's a coordination between water access and actually accessibility of the water when it's,
Right.
you talked about dredging. So if you could just put on your agenda at some point to contact me, and I'll put you on our agenda so you can fill us in.
Okay, sure, Terry. It would have to be this coming month. The reason that it's a bit exigent that we do that is because the city is pursuing a grant through the Chesapeake Bay Trust for funding for this project, and the grant deadline is March 5th. So in order to do this, I just recently talked to the trust about this. I told them Will and I would have to jump on the community outreach portion of it right away while, we're working with Public Works to consider what can be done there. And as we solicit input from the community, we'll be informing what track we're applying for, whether we're going for a concept design or whether we're actually going to go for engineering and design. So if you can fit us in this month, that would be perfect.
I'll make it a point to fit you in. It'll be the third Tuesday of February, 7 o'clock. And we'll make sure you get on the agenda, and we'll take you first so you can be in and out.
Okay. And by then,
Thanks,
Will and I
Ross.
will have a much more developed presentation. We'll have pictures and options and different types of things.
All right, and for the rest of the community,
Terry?
I think he dropped off.
Yeah, he froze there.
While Terry is thawing out, next week, the next order was Elvia, then Jane, then Karen Jennings.
Okay.
Can I ask also, Ross and Marianne, when people are making comments or have questions, that they introduce themselves so I can take notes and track what their questions are?
Oh, of course.
Sorry.
Will, I do have the list of who's spoken so far if you want that for later.
Oh, I have it.
Okay. All right.
So I think Elvia was next.
Elvia, then Jane, and Karen.
Yeah, Elvia Thompson with Annapolis Green. And my question, Jackie, is this going to be a joint project with the Spot Creek Conservancy?
Well, we're going to partner with Spot Creek Conservancy on this. I know what you're referring to. The Spot Creek Conservancy did put in for a grant to the Chesapeake Bay Trust to do a living shoreline at the same site. And the mayor and the trust got together and started talking about some other options for such a use options, which weren't considered in the Spot Creek Conservancy's application, which was granted. So the trust wanted to know if the Spot Creek Conservancy would do the community outreach piece as well as work on and then modify their approach if necessary per the community input. And the Spot Creek Conservancy declined because they feel that their expertise is in water restoration projects and not so much in community outreach. So they decided to, rather than take the grant, defer to the city taking the lead on it, but we'll partner with the city moving forward.
Okay, thanks. That's good for everybody to know.
Okay.
Who was next? Jane Lawrence?
Jane Lawrence. Jackie, I think you answered part of my question, but how, in that you have a short deadline, but how does this fit in with the broader question of redevelopment at Eastport Terrace Harbor House? Or does it?
It doesn't exactly, but what it does do is we're hoping that this will, by enhancing this area, it will provide an amenity to the residents of those communities.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So it's a short-term improvement that won't affect any kind of stormwater issues. I mean, are those connected?
No, it will definitely account for the stormwater flow. There's quite a bit of stormwater, as I explained in the beginning. This is a 93-acre watershed coming down a steep incline, so it's pulling a lot of pollutants with it. So we need to improve the existing project that the Spot Creek Conservancy did some years ago that needs some maintenance.
So it doesn't leave HACA at a disadvantage. If anything, it's an advantage.
It's an advantage. Exactly.
Okay,
yeah,
thank
it's an
you.
improvement. Mm-hmm.
Can I jump in, Jackie?
Yes.
Some of that. Well, the other part. Hello, my name is William, or Will, and there's a part of this, Jane and others, in terms of outreach and the actual project and how it intersects with housing authority and surrounding neighborhoods, in that it does create another open space and green space that is to bring people together. But it also provides an opportunity for us to do more outreach and more engagement, so that there is a sense of, an added sense of community in a space that's for everyone. And the hope is that through this process and through engaging all of you all and those who live in Harbor House and Eastport Terrace, that we can begin kind of merging how people view even the redevelopment part, like merging their future view of that space, which is important, because on that particular property, there's a lot of open space, but it really isn't fully utilized. So this, hopefully is a first step towards looking at, at that space.
Karen. Thank you, Will. Karen?
Just in terms, oops, I'm not muted, right?
No, you're on.
Okay, good. Just in terms of ideas, I know years ago, Debbie Wood from the Chesapeake Children's Museum had suggested that she would love to see their like kayak rentals as like a training program for local youth. And we had that sort of over at the Back Creek Nature Park. So maybe something like that, I think, would be really cool there. And could be a way to like get people using that area more, and then also, provide some training for the youth in the area. And I know Jackie's heard me say this a million times in my role with the Annapolis Conservancy Board, but one thing that really excites me about the opportunities at Hawkins Cove is that if we can connect a trail through there, it's like the last piece that would allow you to walk all the way around Spa Creek, either on sidewalks or on existing pathways through areas like, through Truxton Park, obviously, but also like over around by behind Maryland Hall and the middle school, and then also like at the top of like over by the Chesapeake Children's Museum. So it's a really cool connection that would like let you actually walk a whole loop around from the Eastport Bridge all the way up to the head of Spa Creek and all the way back around again. So that would be really awesome, I think.
Yeah, Karen, that's one of the ideas that the mayor is really enthusiastic about, is the walkability part of it and connecting green spaces. So point well taken.
I see one more hand up, but let me interject right here, because I think, Jackie, the trade-off is going to be, and there was someone who could not attend tonight, but asked me to mention this for them. There's going to be a trade-off between putting a lot of things in there and keeping it a green space or a natural space. And I hope we find a good compromise. It is a nice connectivity point, and it is a lovely quiet spot. So I think it is going to be a delicate balance. Lynn, did you still have your hand up? Or was there another?
Put it up again, just a follow-on question. This is Lynn Michael from Shearwater. I did see your contact information, Jackie, but I didn't see an email address. Did you mean not to include that?
Yes, it's so you can take this down. It's JS as in Sam, GUILD, JS Guild at Annapolis.gov.
Okay. And then just to follow on in terms of the walkability that was just mentioned, well, on the south side, is it south? Anyway, on the Eastport side of Spa Creek, there are a couple of private communities that border along Spa Creek, so they would not be part of this walkability, would they?
I'm not sure if
No,
not sure what you're talking about, which communities you're talking about.
Yeah,
and President's Point, for example.
President's Point, okay.
Along the Eastport side of Spa Creek, as well as several private homes on Creek and Longwood, I think are the names, or Lockwood, maybe it is. But they are private property, so I presume that a public walkway around Spa Creek would not be on those properties. Is that right?
Well, we won't be putting a walkway on private property, no.
Okay, all right, just want to make sure. All right, thank you.
There's an access road that goes down to that area, and then there's a trail that goes up. So essentially, I run it all the time with the dog, and that circle up, around town. So there's actually already an access way to get through there that isn't on private property.
On the Esports side, you mean, or?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, because there's an access road. There's an access road that goes up beside the HECA building.
Yeah. There's some trails that are not well marked and not well maintained there. And so that's an idea, is to mark them and make them more accessible and friendly to people who want to run or walk.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't going to be on private property, because that would be a huge issue. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Karen, did you have another comment?
I just wanted to follow up to that, just because it was what I was suggesting about the walking, but I didn't mean like going through private properties. I meant like using sidewalks in places where you can't go on the waterfront. Like, so for example, Sydney, Australia has a designated path that goes all around their harbor, but places where the waterfront's private, they show people on the map how to go on sidewalks around there. But so, and it would be the same. It's the same. There's places on the other side, on the non-Eastport side of Spa Creek, that's the same way, that you would have to go on sidewalks for a little bit and that to get back to public areas. But it all connects though, at any rate.
So do you think, this is Lynn, right? I mean,
Karen, Jenny.
Karen.
This is Karen. So are you saying, just so I can track this, that it would be helpful in a presentation or in an explaining it further, that we kind of show a little bit of, that access way and a little bit of the path that, people can take that's not on private property? Like, that helps for people to understand how they'll be able to access that path?
Well, I mean, that's always been my dream, I guess, for this connection. Just because I think it's a really cool thing that they have in Sydney, where they actually give people a little map, or you can go on their website and get a map, and it shows you like how you can walk to go all the way around, so that you could spend an afternoon like walking all the way around the harbor and in a total loop. And I think that would be a cool thing for Annapolis to have, because we don't have that anywhere on any of our creeks. So, and this is like the one spot where it's just like this one last little link, and then you can do it. But you do have to know where to, like, because I'm familiar enough with the area that I would know what streets to go down. But like if somebody was a tourist and wanted to do it or something, they wouldn't know. So I think it would be a cool thing to put on a map. And because there's like on the other side of Spa Creek, there's some street end parks on that side that you can dip down into as well. So I don't know. I think it could be a neat tourist feature.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
All right, so thank you, Jackie and Will. I think that was very helpful. And if anybody wants to get comments and they didn't catch Jackie's email, you can always send them to me and I'll get them on to Jackie and Will. I want to go back to the agenda and remind you, in this section, we just had a discussion about Hawkins Cove. I want to give you a brief update on the Esports Shopping Center, other water access issue at Blue Heron Condos, talk about a little bit about the Maritime Task Force, the next comprehensive plan, and South Annapolis Yachting Center. So without further ado, I'm going to give you just a very brief update on the Esports Shopping Center. I get a lot of questions about that. As many of you may know, there's been an ongoing appeal about adequate public facilities. There was a second hearing on adequate public facilities, and I'm glad Heidi Hollick is here on the call. She can keep me straight if I get it off track here. It's been remanded back for further consideration of the mitigation, because there are 5 adequate public facility criterias that have not been met: police, stormwater, recreation, traffic, and non-auto transportation. So that is in process. Mitigation allows for an alternate but equal compensation if we can't meet the adequate public facilities, and we're working to get to that level. However, it's my understanding that this may be going directly to circuit court rather than through the next round of adequate public facilities. I have received an email saying that's the case, but I'm really not aware of that. So are there questions or clarifications on the status of Esports Shopping Center? Heidi, do you want to say anything further than what I did?
Just that for some people that we don't understand what the public facilities are, that's whether they meet adequacy for police, parks and recreation, like that Hawkins Cove, what we're talking about would be create a public space for the development around there. If there's not enough public space, they have to do other things. And it's for traffic concerns, non-auto concerns, and stormwater, whether a step plan pool would be put in similar to that. The last piece of all this is that recently there's been a covenant placed on the deed that the property can only be developed as commercial property because there is a contaminants field underneath it, as resulting from the old gas station as well as the old dry cleaner, and that hasn't been resolved. And those are some of the issues going forward on this case.
Yeah, so it's been long in the making. A lot of people have worked hard on it. Are there any questions or comments? I'm looking for hands. So I don't see any other hands up. So I'll move on. And water access has become quite an issue in Annapolis. I think getting to the water is just part of human nature. So the city council is very aware, and many of my colleagues are on this town hall, of that general issue. We have a specific issue off of Boucher near the Blue Heron condominium complex. We're working this issue, we being the department. A little bit of background. Back in 1986, there was a resolution, R2286, that gave permission to develop the condominium. Part of that permission was a 15-foot right-of-way over a stormwater drain pipe that went from Boucher down to the Wells Cove there. And part of that resolution said that the project to be approved needed to provide a 4-foot wide path for public access to open space and waterfront areas. Water access and people knowing how to find water access has been a longstanding issue ever since I've been alderman. Both complaints from the people who live there about people coming across their property, and also complaint from citizens who really want to know how they can get down to the water there to put their kayaks or paddle boards in the water. So this is not new. What has brought it to recent attention is that there is a floating dock there that is asking for a permit application, and the floating dock is in the way of where water access would be obtained. I've been working with city staff and the property owners, both Blue Heron and the property owner next to who has the floating dock, and we're working hard to find a win-win-win compromise solution. It's slow going. The Office of Law has gotten deed issues reconciled, and we're working with Public Works to determine just what can happen around that outflow, particularly in a heavy rain situation. How safe is it to have a floating dock there, period? But the main point is we're working at our city pace, which is not always fast, but it is always determined to come up with a solution that works for everybody. So I'm looking for hands for questions of clarification or comments, and I see none. Oh, all right. Yes, please. I think it's Sally, but it says Harry.
Yeah, it's me again, Ross. Sorry. Yeah, that's right down at the end of our street. And so I think that a lot of us didn't realize, we've only been here, what, 8-9 years? We didn't realize it was supposed to be public access. So we always went through Sarles, which of course has now been, the people who ran Sarles were very lenient about if you wanted to put your kayak in or your paddleboard in there, they didn't care. But since it's been under construction, we've had no way to access water. So I just want to say I appreciate you working with the folks around there to regain some access for us.
Well, you're quite welcome, and we need to give our appreciation to the homeowners around there. You can understand this is a delicate balance, having people show up and walk across your front yard, but it was part of the agreement, and where the actual right-of-way is off on the far side of the condominium complex. And I really do have some hopes and some optimism that we're going to come up with a win-win. And I will be talking about South Annapolis Yachting Center in my last set of remarks on this, because that's an ongoing effort as well. So seeing no hands, I will move on to, the next item, which is an update on the Maritime Task Force. This is something that my colleagues gratefully passed the request to set up this task force. My colleagues on the council, it's a three-pronged effort. One is to look at maritime zoning code that has been in effect for the last 35 years, see if there's any need to make changes there. The second is to look at the health of the maritime industry in the city of Annapolis. It's part of our heritage, it's part of our branding. And then the last one is this ever-present access to and safety on the Annapolis waters. So we're going to be getting some more input from the task force members on water access and these other two issues. I can say that the task force has moved along quite expeditiously thanks to the guidance of Eileen Fogarty. She's a real taskmaster and drives people to get some conclusions. And there will be a briefing tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Julian, can you tell us that's going to be available to the public, right? Is that a briefing for the Planning Commission that will be televised?
It will, yes. It will be streaming. I don't recall right off the top of my head if it's going to be streaming on Facebook or YouTube, but it will be streaming tomorrow. And then it will be then updated onto I believe on the website page and on the city's page, on the city's website rather.
So we have some really good people on the task force, some of whom are also in this meeting. And I've been tuning into the subcommittee meetings as much as I can. And I think we're getting a lot of productive thought. That does not mean that we necessarily have consensus agreement, however, but we are certainly airing the issues. Debbie.
I just want to clarify one thing. The Planning Commission is being updated at their meeting on the 4th, I'm sorry, at 7 p.m. The meeting tomorrow is a work session.
A work session of the task force?
Of the task force.
But it will be televised. Okay, thank you for that clarification. All right, I'm looking for hands, questions, comments. Boy, either I'm very good or I'm not hitting interesting topics. So I'll move to the next one, which is the status of the comp plan. As you know, municipalities are required to do a comprehensive plan every 6 or so years. Because of COVID, we've been given an extension on this comp plan. It's ostensibly the comp plan for 2021. My bet is it's going to be more likely the comp plan for 2022, but we'll see. They also are moving apace. They're doing a lot of study, a lot of outreach. They have a lot of groups. They recently gave a presentation to the Planning Commission It was quite extensive and detailed, and the Planning Commission received it pretty well, I thought. They just did a shorter briefing to the City Council at a work session last week, and I wouldn't say it wasn't well received, but I would say that there were a lot of questions from council members, and we're going to schedule a follow-on meeting to get into more detail with planning and zoning, and Eric Lashinsky, who's heading this up for the city, relatively new employee, but with an excellent set of credentials. I think some of the underlying concerns are plans for redevelopment of all of the shopping centers in the city into mixed use. And we want to be sure what kind of growth that is going to bring on, and what are things that will mitigate increased traffic and things like that. It's sort of the standard kind of debate we get into when we talk about new development and change. And I think, as always, it's going to require a balanced approach. But that is a work in progress, and I'm looking for hands and not seeing hands, so I will move right along. We're going to finish. We're going to leave lots of time for your issues and questions at the end. The last thing on development I just wanted to bring up is South Annapolis Yachting Center. I'm kind of surprised myself about how slow the buildings are going up. But the issue I wanted to talk about is this construction fence, which is a black wrought iron fence that was erected a couple of months ago. And there's concern once again about access and the ability to people, as was just mentioned earlier, people being able to take boats down, kayaks or paddle boards to launch them. Those are discussions that are ongoing with the developer and the Planning Commission. The developer eventually wants to come in for a special exception for a restaurant. I don't know how you can have a closed off gated community and also have a restaurant, but those are details that are going to be sorted out as the application goes forward. And if I don't see hands, I do, I see Diane's hand, yes. So.
Hi, Ross. Diane Butler. Well, one of the things I want to point out is that we all know when the construction fence, which was a chain link fence, was taken down and a wrought iron fence was put up, we all knew that it was no longer a construction fence. And even the mayor said, we know this is not a construction fence. And yet it still stands. And I would contend that if any of us put a fence up around our properties without a permit approval, we would have to take it down. So could you address that issue for us?
Yeah, it is technical and legal, as my understanding from planning and zoning and the Office of Law is that until they come in for a final fence permit, whatever fence they want to put up to enclose the construction site is of their choosing. I've heard other people say no, that the state code prescribes a certain kind of construction fence and height. I'd say that the critical point, the decision point, is when they come in with a permanent fence permit, which they will have to do. And then we'll look at that fence to see what kinds of openings. For example, there is a fence around Shearwater, but the permit for that fence required that there be an opening in the fence to allow access, and there is. It's not a very conspicuous opening, but we typically don't require things to be closed off, but there are condominiums all along both Spa Creek and Back Creek that are inaccessible. Chesapeake Landing is one that comes to mind immediately. But the decision point, as I understand it, is going to be when they actually come in for a fence permit. That is.
So actually, Ross, they have, and it was basically, I guess Tom Smith said, no, it doesn't meet the height requirement and some other issues. And they didn't even keep, really take into account that one of the conditions for approval of the project was to have reasonable pedestrian access across the property to the water, not limited to, but including water taxi access. So a lot of the neighbors have been up in arms because it doesn't look like there's access anymore. And the part that's the marina is actually open, and there are people using the marina, and that's not part of where the construction is anymore. There are buildings, the actual 11 luxury townhomes that are still being built. And that part is sort of separate. It's on the right side as you look at the water. The left side is a fully accessible, marina that's being used. So it just doesn't square with the whole argument that it's a construction fence.
I hear what you're saying. I can tell you that I regularly drive over there, and I regularly drive onto the property through an open gate and look around. The gate is up at the top of the hill and far away from where you would want to lug a kayak or a paddleboard to plunk it in. I think there are reasons in a construction site to want to limit the number of people that are walking around while construction equipment and other things are going on. But I think that the decision point is when it comes up for the final fence permit. But
Ross, the final permit, they've tried to get a fence permit, is what I'm saying.
They have, I know, and they haven't been granted that.
So they're just keeping it up. So the city so what I'm saying is citizens get annoyed when the city doesn't enforce the law. And I know you're our alderman and you do a great job, but what can you do to get the city to enforce the law against a developer? Because they definitely enforce the law against us little residents.
So here's the most effective thing I can suggest, Diane, and this is a trick that I have to admit I learned late in my tenure as alderman. The best thing you can do when you need me to do something is to send me an email, and I respond to you, but copy all of the relevant people in the city administration and ask for them to get back to you and I. And that's proven to be pretty effective. And I think we can do that again. I know you've done this with me and for me in the past. And I would say, we just have to keep those emails coming and that prodding coming. It's not that I haven't talked to both the planning staff and the Office of Law. That the only pressure I can bring to bear is to ask them in response to constituent requests, why aren't they doing something about this?
And I'm hearing it as a member of the Planning Commission. I was not on the Planning Commission when this came before the Planning Commission, but people must think that I was, or they just think I have some sway. But the Planning Commission has nothing to do with enforcement. But at the Planning Commission level, as you know, there was long discussion about public access. They agreed to allow public access, and putting up a fence is in direct conflict with that promise, as well as the conditions of approval of the plan. So I'm not speaking as just an individual from Eastport. I'm speaking as a person who gets bombarded with questions about why aren't we enforcing the law. So I will definitely follow up. Thank you.
Yes, I saw Karen and then Sally. So Karen, you're next.
I mean, I guess just to kind of echo what Diane's saying, but it's a little concerning to me well, I guess to back up a little bit, like, as someone who lives in that part of the neighborhood and was attending all of the meetings when they were soliciting neighborhood input, we were told multiple times that there would be public access. And I kind of feel like, well, the city's not going to make them stick to that. Like, who's going to stand up for us? Like, somebody needs to stand up for the residents who were basically lied to, it seems like, in terms of this access. And so,
Karen, I was at many of those meetings, and I have been talking constantly. The mayor agrees that water access has to be there. That is his policy as mayor. The city council members general policy is we want water access wherever we can get it. And just keep those cards and letters coming, and I will continue to ask the questions and ask for a response. And I will ask that the response come back to both you and me for that. So seems like it's a good time to have another round.
Okay, and I guess like listening to you and Diane talking about the fence permit, I'm just a little confused about, you know, it sounds like everyone's saying like, well, we're waiting to see what they say about the fence approval, but shouldn't we be saying like, you guys aren't supposed to have a fence? Like you shouldn't even be applying for a fence. Like, why are they, I mean, I feel like by the time they make the Department of Planning and Zoning makes a decision about the fence, if they approve it, then we're kind of like, oh, well, I don't know. I mean, it seems like we need to be more, maybe saying more aggressively, like they shouldn't be having a fence or applying for a fence.
So I hear your frustration. I feel your frustration myself. I think that the basic thing, as Diane said, they have not gotten permit for that new fence, but the city seems loath to take action to tell them, take it down and put a chain link fence back up. What do you do?
Okay.
I mean, again, the pressure I can bring is through you. You are my constituents, and when you raise questions, I take it to them. But it's not like I'm not asking questions about it myself. I have the same concern. I have very much the feel of a bait and switch, and being bullied by the situation. But you know, we've got to get the city to do it. So I see Debbie Dillon and then Jane Lawrence.
I just wanted to make the quick
and
comment.
Sally, I meant Sally too, sorry.
Oh,
Okay,
no,
I just wanted to
Ross,
make-
I was just going to say that, you know, I will, if that's what you need is input from the constituents to give you that backing, I will have something in your email very soon.
I appreciate that. And that, by the way, is why we have these town hall meetings. This is where you get your very direct interaction with me and where I can tell you how you can help me. I'm sorry, Debbie, go ahead.
That's okay. I just wanted to quickly say that ECA has repeatedly weighed in on this issue.
Yep.
Just and asked, you know, repeatedly city staff to give us updates, to require the fence to be removed, to have the, you know, first of all, the fence is 6 feet and it violates code. It should, you know, if it were to meet code, it would be 4 feet. That doesn't even address the issue of we were promised water access. And then the issue of a gate is I was told that that's being considered just a minor modification. So that instead of a major modification, which will require a public hearing. So citizens are kind of being locked out. The city, you know, if the city had made it a minor modification, because it does remove access, then a gate would completely remove access. You know, in our view, it shouldn't be treated as a minor modification, but the city has not agreed. So I understand that we're trying to improve water access at Hawkins Cove, but we have a site that's active right now that we're about to lose water access. And from an ECA perspective, we just don't understand it.
No, I hear you. And by the way, when you're sending emails to me, copy the mayor too, or copy the whole city council. As I said earlier, and I'll get to you in a second, Jane, the city council is very much concerned about water access. They get it. They want it. Some of my colleagues, particularly Duan Gay, are very, very much on top of it. And I'm delighted to have their support on it. And so it's one of those things, like you, we do a million things a day, and we know this is an issue, but we have a whole bunch of others. When you send that email and bring it to our attention, and then I forward it on and bring it to the administration's attention. I mean, frankly, I think this is ultimately going to go to a lawsuit. I don't think that it's going to have a happy ending, but we have to let it play out and see where we go with that. sorry to be a downer on that, but Jane, you were one.
Well, I'll follow on as a downer. I just want to point out the elephant in the room. For years, folks in Esports and other parts of the city have noticed that there seems to be this rope-a-dope. You know, you ask the city hall something and they say, oh, we haven't heard from your alderman. You should talk to your alderman. Then you talk to the alderman and the alderman says, well, what's the answer to this? And they say, eh. And so the elephant in the room is we have deputy city manager and we have Will Rowell on this call. So I would just like to say that from my perspective, and I hope others agree with me, this is a town hall, something has been raised. I think we deserve an answer back from the administration and really a timeline on what's going on, what are they doing? And it's fine for us to send you an email and have you send emails, but we've done that over and over again. Our civic association has asked for information. So let's kind of cut to the chase. So I hope that the city manager's office and the office of law and the mayor's office will get together and send you back a response, and Charles Hernick at ECA, that let's spit it out. Where are we?
Yeah.
I'm happy to do that on behalf of the city manager's office. I can speak with the mayor and planning and zoning and get a definitive answer. I learned last week or the week before that there, according to the mayor, there definitely would be public access there. The question is, would it go in right away, or are they waiting to do that when the restaurant that is projected to be built there would happen? I know you don't want to wait for that.
No, the reason, and I shouldn't have shaken my head. You know, you've been around the block. That restaurant might be 10 years away.
Sure, and exactly.
So I guess what I'm saying is, we all want to call out the elephant and say, you know, we're really pretty, actually, we're pretty polite and we're pretty responsive to reasons that can slow things down. But I think we deserve an answer that doesn't go to, and it's not your fault, I know, but it really doesn't let the developer say, oh, that's in the future, because that's how we got here in the first place.
Right.
We believe the developers' expressions, and, you know, fool us once, we've been fooled about 10 times, so.
Right. No, I know this group has been diligent in pursuing the public access and has been getting lots of different answers. So I'll follow up with Ross once I can speak to the mayor and the city manager about it and planning and zoning.
Thank you, Jackie. That's
You're
really
welcome.
terrific.
Yeah, and that's why we're very glad you and Will are on this meeting, because we can get right to the people that are with the mayor day in and day out. So that's a good thing. So Jane, thank you for calling me and this issue. You're right. And it has been dragging on, and it does feel very much like rope-a-dope, and very much like when it happens to us, it's going to be, oh, well, you should have said that back in 2020 when the fence first went up. Yeah, I hear you. And I think that is part of a mindset that needs to get changed in the administration. I think citizens need to come first. So I will accept my culpability and promise renewed energy on this. And I will remind you that some of us will become knocking on your doors a few months from now, asking for your vote, and you should be reminding us of that then as well. So I think this has been a healthy discussion, and I am glad that Jackie and Will were on the call. Heidi.
I just want to say, having gone through a full trial with the city attorneys on a development issue, I find them very capable and very aggressive. And I find them, the new, both of them, to be super mindful of the law and experienced. And what disappoints me is that it seems that their mission is sometimes lost in this. that they have the capacity to address this issue and address it aggressively, because I've been on the other side of that, that they'll put their efforts into this, the citizens. It was the citizens against the city for this development issue. But I would like it to be more I would like the city and the Office of Law to work together cooperatively and not antagonistically. And I would like them to use their superpowers to continue in advancing the public interest rather than the private interest.
And thank you for that input. And of course, I watched the long appeals case, and I'm watching other cases that are going on before the Board of Appeals right now. And I do think that there needs to be a conversation in-house about where the priorities are and what we're doing. I have some real concerns that we're turning the Board of Appeals into every bit as complicated and with heavy requirements as if you were going to circuit court. And the whole point of having Board of Appeals, Planning Commission, Port Wardens, all of those bodies where citizens are hearing citizens is to head off having to go to court, head off having to spend all that money. And how many of us have the money to spend to go to court? So you can get buffaloed just by the barriers to entry. So that is a conversation that needs to happen. I've been watching it, and unfortunately, things are getting more and more litigious and more complicated and less neighborly. So that's something that I've been worrying about a lot. I don't see any other hands. I really have very little left on the agenda, which is a good thing because we're starting to run out of time. I just wanted to briefly talk about public safety because along with development and potholes and sidewalks, public safety is what I hear from you the most about. And I'm glad that Alderman Savage is on this call. I wanted to tell you that he is taking the lead. I am working with him, but it is his heavy lift on a package of legislation that is responsive to the national scene and some of the things that we are seeing happening in police departments across the country. So Rob is working on a peace package of legislation. Basically, it's designed to set standards for things like use of force, de-escalation tactics, chokeholds or no chokeholds, and use of force, firearms in particular. I think I want to thank Rob publicly for the level of effort that he's put into this. It is now, and yes, everybody for Rob. It's now in our Office of Law for drafting. And Rob, if you want to say a few words, now's your chance.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Ross. And this is being done in, so this is something that's been under development for probably more than 6 months at this point. It took me a while to put it together and then worked with my colleagues, a number of colleagues, to gather input to draft legislation. And then we sent it to the law office, and now it's been with them for, about 2 months. It's going to be a large omnibus, but the intention with it is, we haven't even had a chance. Once we get it back from the law office, we'll give a lot more information out to the public and organizations about it. But the intention, I named it Peace Act for a reason, and it's meant to. It's called. I'm trying to remember what it stands for: Police Enhancement and Community Engagement. So it tries to respond to some of the issues we've heard around the country to make sure they don't happen here in terms of the George Floyd incidents and Breonna Taylor, those kind of things that have happened. But also at the same time, enhance the police department in the sense that we want to build, improve the whole underlying premises to improve the trust between the community and the police. And so we want to be building upon and incorporating some tenets of community policing into the code and requiring certain metrics be released. So we haven't even had a chance to talk about this with the police department, because I'm trying to hold off on a lot of that, because I think there needs to be a public discussion and that everybody needs to hear, because I think our police department is doing a lot of good things, and I know our administration is doing a lot of great things, and so I think it's important to have that be public. So this is being done in coordination with the mayor's office, and I'm glad Will Rowell's here, and I know he's heading an effort for the Civilian Review Board, and that is something that I have a template for a boilerplate, kind of a placeholder, I should say, in the legislation for that, because what I hope to do is pull whatever Will's task force comes up with and put that into this legislation. Yeah, that's basically it. We tried to incorporate some ideas from the county's gun violence task force as well. So it's going to really be a pretty significant piece of legislation.
So, Will, I didn't ask you ahead of time, but if you want to talk about that commission, I think this would now be a good time to take a couple of minutes and brief us.
Okay. I'm going to turn my light up a little bit in here and hope that you all can see me.
You can?
Can you all see me? Okay, good. Thank you, Rob. And I want to give some credit to Rob also for his process, because he did vet a lot of his core and foundational building blocks for that legislation with a lot of different people, including myself, which gave me an opportunity to really coalesce some of the strategies that we were using for civilian oversight into our process as well. So it's truly been symbiotic. So where to begin? So the first part is remembering that earlier on in past administrations, there was a commitment from most policymakers, in particular candidates that were running for state senate, were running for county council seats and city council seats. There was a commitment for them, and this was some years ago, there was a commitment for them to agree to some aspect of civilian review or monitoring of police, of our police agency in Annapolis. A large part of what originally came out of some recommendations a few years ago was body cameras on police officers, and we achieved that. So that was, just jumping. That was one of the wins, along with trust, transparency, and accountability. So the Civilian Review Board process began some time ago. What we decided to do was create an advisory panel. And the reason why is because we need to really unpack some of the building blocks for a Civilian Review Board, mostly because we wanted some learning to take place. And the key part of the Civilian Review Board advisory panel is to contextualize some of the information, some of the data, some of the issues that we know exist in other parts of the country, and to bring that home to Annapolis so that we really understood what some of our challenges were in relation to, truly achieving community police, relationships, something that's healthy. So the first thing we did was, as I said, convene an advisory panel, which is comprised of both civilians, so Annapolitans, as well as affinities like the NAACP, the Caucus of African American Leaders, members of our Human Relations Commission, and also importantly, members of the police department. So we have 2 representatives from the police department, one of which represents the police union. We also have members who are on the Police Foundation, and we also have, attorneys and people who have done cases involving the police department and also acted on behalf of some citizens. Most importantly, we also have some impacted persons who are on the advisory panel, and that includes people who have had incidents with police, police officers in the past, or have gone through the criminal justice system. So what we wanted to do was, create a capacity building opportunity for them to learn. And our first meeting that we had in January, in December, actually walked us through the process that we're going to undertake, some of the curriculum and training, and also, was an introduction and a reason why they wanted to be a part of the process, so that we were clear about it. And you can watch all of this on YouTube. If you go to the city's website, it's listed under boards and commissions. It's an ad hoc. So you'll see it on there under CRB advisory panel. This last meeting that we actually had, which was last night or Tuesday night, we actually had an opportunity to get a civilian oversight 101 training from a facilitator who is the past president of a national organization that handles that, and it was quite successful. So I encourage you all, if you're interested, need more information, or really you want to know what civilian oversight entails or what's going to be happening, please reach out to me or the mayor's office, or go on the website. I will say that this process is something that is, first of all, public facing. All of our meetings abide by the Public Meetings Act, which means that, we're practicing kind of what we're preaching, and we're modeling what we hope happens with all other processes, which is it's public, and the public actually influences that process, because it is really all about serving and meeting people where they are, and providing the things that they need to feel safe and also feel connected to the agencies that serve them. So
Will, let me interject. When I think of a civilian review board, I actually think of a board that is reviewing various activities or actions that have been taken by the police department. Is that the ultimate goal, that we will establish such a board? This is what all of this is leading towards?
Well, yes, Ross, that is actually one of the goals. It's a pretty complex process, but you did, in a nutshell, what you said is essentially kind of what the utility would be. But remember, this advisory panel is coming up with a series of recommendations. So they're going to do the heavy lifting on, for example, some of the stuff that you said, whether it's monitoring, whether they have an opportunity to look at cases, investigators, all that type of stuff. And then it goes to you. So it'll go, to go to the city council, and that'll give you all an opportunity to really have some good data, and also have, essentially a white paper for you to look at and kind of look at, some of what's in there. So I'm excited about that. I think we're all excited about
Well, we're looking forward to it. And if it's going to require legislation, as you know, we better be moving it along, because the first meeting in June is the last meeting where we can introduce new legislation this year and get it through to passage. Let me just say one final thing. I wanted to mention the new chief has been in his position for about 1.5 years now. He's brought in a new team of people at the upper echelons, and now the expectation is that he will be, and he has started to do this, rolling out his version of community policing. For most of us, and I know my colleague Alderwoman Finlayson, who isn't on tonight, but we talk about it all the time, views community policing as having an officer that is in your neighborhood day in and day out. You know him, he knows you. And if we had the resources to do it, I think we would conceivably like to get to that. We may have to do some substitution, but the new chief is trying to have a corps of officers that are stationed in various parts of the city all the time. It's a work in progress. He now, as I said, has his team in place, and we're looking forward to this new form of policing to start showing up. There are a lot of police in our community day in and day out that we're not aware of because we're not supposed to be aware that they're there. And that's because they want other people to not be aware they're there as well. But we do also want to see, I think, a visual presence of officers that we know and can trust and talk to. So again, the chief is working hard on that, and he has his team in place. Those were the things that I had on my agenda to present. I see Frida has her hand up. Frida, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for holding this town hall tonight, Ross. Just one final thought. Would you please make a comment about the Tuesday Board of Appeals hearing about the new 77-seat and 4 residential units at 424, 428 4th Street, which is the neighbors on 5th Street are appealing the director's decision on a revision of the site design plan. But I think that the residents, if we felt like the city didn't roll out the red carpet for developers, there wouldn't be so much litigation. We really want the city to represent the neighbors and the taxpayers that are here 24/7 and not the developers that live in Baltimore. So I appreciate your comments on that. Thank you.
Well, I think I'm totally in sync with the comments that you just made. And it's something I'm working on. As I said, I think we need to work on the tone and the tenor. I heard at least twice tonight that the citizens are viewed as the enemy. And that obviously does not get it, that we cannot let that stand. And that is something that you can expect me and my colleagues on the council to be working on. The city should always be viewed as our friend. Now, that doesn't mean that the city's always going to make decisions that are exactly in sync with the decisions we want, but it should not be a hostile environment. It shouldn't feel onerous and intimidating. And that's what I say, what I mean when I say we need a change in tone. And it's something that I have been talking particularly with the city manager about more and more. We've had the city attorney at the rules committee and talking about this, talking about boundaries, talking about the relationship. The city is here to serve you. I am here to serve you. And you should feel that that is the way things are. And when you don't, there's something wrong. And I think you're right, Frida. That's what's leading to more and more contentiousness. It's leading to more and more appeals. It's leading to more and more things going on to circuit court. And it's really what we did not want to happen when we set up these citizens boards and commissions. And we need to find a way to get back to that citizens hearing citizens, and we need to get back to city hearing the citizens. And so that is certainly high on my agenda. It's certainly something I hear from all of you whose input I value, and there's a large number of you, many of you on this meeting.
Dogs.
But I
Hello, you dogs.
understand your point.
Hello, Max.
I think we're sharing a conversation with with others here. Can somebody mute?
Yeah.
Debbie, did I see you had your hand up? No. All right. So Frida, I think, yes, Will, if you want to respond to that. But Frida, I understand your point exactly. And I have your concern. Will, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I didn't want to respond because I want to stay out of trouble. But
yeah, me too,
but
I don't get that choice.
Yeah, but I did want to comment on one of the things that I didn't hear mentioned is our paved streets and some of the sidewalk work. And so I'm in your ward. I live on Wells, and our street was done, and it seemed like forever and a day, but we got it done. And one good thing is to commend you, Ross, for ensuring that some of that stuff was done in our neighborhood. I don't know if you nudged or or pushed on that, but we needed it. So thank you.
Let me stop you, Will. I'll gladly take the credit, but truthfully, that is the credit due to me is because we upped the amount of money going into the capital improvement plan to increase the frequency of recycling the paving. The credit for the repaving clearly goes to our Department of Public Works, but I'll take the credit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, everyone's credit, but we appreciate that, and that is a plus. We do have a lot of issues. We do have a lot of things that we need to work on, but some of those things are bedrock things that demonstrate that some things are being done. Thank you.
Potholes, sidewalks, trash collection, those are the day-to-day staples. That's what really is governance at the local level. Debbie, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, just a follow-up to Will around the sidewalk and street repair. Is there a way for citizens to see? At ECA, we've had a lot of people come to us and say they've put in requests through the city website and they just remain open. Is there a way to understand, to get a status report? Like, is it going to be fixed? Is it in line? And I'm talking long amounts of time. So
Right.
is there a way to get feedback on those, Will? Like,
So I sent to the president's email for ECA exactly that, all the data, the names of the streets, and it shoots it out. So it talks about what's on the list. But what I am hearing that might be good, and you tell me if I'm hearing it may be an opportunity to create a dashboard of some kind, right? That says
Right.
That people can readily access, and they can find out not just stuff about sidewalks, but maybe some other things too, right?
right. And Charles did send out the list that you sent to him. So thank you very much for that, of the street repairs. Yeah, what I'm talking about is more something where you can, because people have come to me and said, I've submitted this street 3 and 4 and 5 times and it sits open and I have no idea if it's going to be fixed, if it's been rejected, if there's no money for it, if there will be money, there's no feedback loop.
Okay. Well, I will tell you, David Jarrell, I'm not totally pandering, but David Jarrell is really, really, really good about that stuff. So all we have to do is just mention it 1 or 2 times to him, and I think he'll figure out a remedy for that. So I'll be sure.
Yeah, it would be a great improvement.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Debbie. So this is open mic time. I also have several colleagues from the council who are coming tonight. Thank you for doing that. And this is also an opportunity. We have 21 minutes left. So if there's things that I didn't touch on that you want to bring up, attendees, or if there's some brief messages from colleagues on the council, look at me talking about brief, but but if there's some things, we got some good input from Rob on the peace initiative, and I see Alderman Payon and Alderwoman Tierney and Alderman Pendle Charles was on. So right now I'm looking for raise of hands. Anybody who has anything they want to discuss before we close the meeting, or we could end early. Not seen. Paul, take your mute off, Bo.
How are you doing tonight, Alderman Arnett?
I'm doing just fine. How are you? And how's Crab doing?
We're doing fabulous, thanks to the city, the county, the state. But I wanted to stick to Esports, so I wanted to let William know that I don't know how he's getting out of Well Street without turning left on President without hitting the largest pothole in Eastport, but it's right there at the intersection. So right there in the middle of the street, I think you'll find it, and I'm sure within about 48 hours it'll be fixed.
Okay.
And that'll be good news.
Okay.
A question I had is it was reported in the paper that the city was taking an extra day of leave for Emancipation Day, but it was only going to cost the city $11,000. Is that a typo or what happened there? Because I've done a number and it's 550 employees, and I know quite a number of them make over $75,000 a year. So I find it hard to believe that it's $11,000.
So let me speak to that, several different points. One, the city has not, that is a ordinance that has been introduced by Alderman Chandelmeyer. Has not been passed, and it is very much in discussion. And there are several different options. But were it to become the 12th paid holiday, the $11,400 is the accounting for time and a half and double overtime. The cost of the day of pay is $225,000 or thereabouts. So you're right. I mean, it's much more than the $11,000. It would be approximately $250,000 to have another paid holiday. Some options that have been discussed are exchanging that for another holiday. So we would keep the number of paid holidays at 11. Others are to have it be a day of remembrance. Actually, Jane Lawrence, who was on here, had a really good suggestion, which is that we have city activities around the city that would reflect in the commemoration of Emancipation Day. It is an important part of our history, but this is still very much a work in progress. It's going to council committees, and particularly facing a squeaky tight budget current and a very challenging budget coming up. It's going to be hard to see, and particularly while COVID is going on and continuing to reduce our revenues for things like parking and bus transit. It's going to be hard for me to see how we can add that. Adding that means we're going to have to reduce some service by a commensurate amount. And
well, Alderman, what I would do is I'm fully in favor of Emancipation Day, particularly as it relates to Annapolis and its history in the slave trade. And I think it should be done in a day that would be able for people to come down to City Dock and have the appropriate events. But I think another holiday like Columbus Day should be eliminated in exchange for that day. So
your wish is granted on Columbus Day. It's no longer Columbus Day.
Well, no slight to the Italians in Annapolis, but I think it would be fabulous to do this day, now. Really solidify it with Peone, with Annapolis.
Right.
I can't help myself. There is also a paid holiday for Good Friday. And I was raised a Roman Catholic. I didn't speak from 12 noon to 3 o'clock. I did the Stations of the Cross, but I really don't understand why the city government has Good Friday as a holiday. So Paul, I agree with you. I think Emancipation Day is really an important concept. That's why I was saying, could we make it so that the city really does honor it rather than just a Wednesday, day off in the middle of the week. And it's just, there it is. But I just want to I'm starting my campaign about Good Friday. I don't get it. So Ross, I'm not going
to- Jane, I was raised a Roman Catholic too. You want me to be excommunicated?
Well, you do tantum erge, whatever it was, erge. But really, I mean, we've got a city with 11 paid holidays. And I don't know, I'm retired now, but if I check in with my children, they do not have 11 paid holidays.
I see Alderman Savage has his hand up. I want to let him take the heat on this one. And Alderman
you guys by the way. I just want to clarify in terms of the cost, because I was a little confused initially as well, but the $200,000 their indirect costs. That's an estimate based on a loss of, I guess, services for that city. Not a loss of services, I guess, but essentially that's just because you're not actually losing that money directly. That's just the equivalent amount of money that you'd have to pay somebody for one day. So that's they're not direct costs. The only direct cost to the city would be that $11,000, which is to pay the overtime for the people who would have to work that day. Otherwise, it's not going to impact the budget. Just to clarify that point.
I'd say that's an issue of semantics. It is what a day's worth of wages cost. And when we're paying the wage, but we don't have the work, to me, that is a direct cost. But we can argue that out at the Finance Committee. Alderman Payon, did you want to say something?
Yeah, you guys are both going to hell. That's what I want.
Oh man.
Ross,
I'm going to run out and go to confession right now.
Can I agree with Jane though? I'd rather be, I don't want to be struck by lightning at 3 o'clock, you know, and so I'm not sure why it's called a holiday. No.
you have a couple of hands up
Yes,
there.
I see Harold and Elvia.
Yeah.
Harold. You're still on mute, Harold. There you go.
Hi, yes, sir. Actually, a couple.
It's freezing.
Oh, it sounds like he froze.
To Ms. Raftovich to try to get a wondering what can be done.
Oh man, we didn't hear any of that.
Yeah, Harold, you were frozen for a while, so can you start over?
Hear any of that? Okay, sorry. Yeah, I've sent a. Can you hear me okay right now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yes, I've sent you a couple of letters and also through Ms. Raftovich about trying to get stop signs on Chesapeake Avenue in front of the elementary school. And Public Works has done nothing, and she's really done nothing, and I haven't gotten any real response from you. How can we move this forward?
Myself. So the answer is the city is not doing one-off stop signs, and the city distribution of stop signs is controlled by state rules and regulations. The holdup is that we had offered a job to a traffic engineer, and at the last minute, that person didn't accept the job. So that put a lot of the traffic analysis back on the schedule. But I think stop signs are something that they certainly are of interest to me. I think they're very critical. The stop sign pattern in Esports kind of drives me crazy because you'll have stop sign, no stop sign, stop sign, stop sign without any particular rhyme or reasoning. Quite frankly, without a logic to the stop signs, I think we encourage people to miss the stop sign or run the stop sign. But they're not going to do, upon request stop signs. They're going to look into it and determine the efficacy of it. And what I've asked them to do, and the Civic Association has also asked from time to time, is for them to come in and do an overall traffic analysis. It was done a while ago, and it's in abeyance right now because we don't have the traffic engineer.
It was, it's become a common concept. We call it the Esports shuffle, where cars are stopping, some are not stopping. If they think there's a stop sign, there isn't one. Or there is one, they're not stopping. It's just something I think, particularly right there in front of the elementary school, is potentially a real problem.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Elvia and then Heidi.
I just wondered if ECA in particular, or even the city, has appealed to BB&T to not close the branch there in Eastport.
I will say I have not. I don't know that ECA has done anything. I think Charles is on the meeting. I'm not sure. I'm sure they're closing it for financial reasons. I mean, more and more banking is done electronically or through ATMs. I suppose we could appeal to them, but I have a feeling that's a corporate decision.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. It's just too bad because, you know, what's nice about Eastport is that you can walk to everything you need except a grocery store. So,
Yep. Well, send me an email, Elvia, and I'll do what I can do.
LV, this is Carolyn Richards, and I spoke to the bank because we were quite upset that they were leaving as well after Sandy Spring left a couple years ago. And it's already a done deal. They're combining efforts. They have too many branches, and you have to go to the one at Hillsmere now. But they're leaving in March. It's already a done deal.
Yeah.
yeah, I know. It's just really sad.
Heidi.
Just briefly, an overall thing, sort of the elephant in the room we talk about, with a $10 million deficit in our budget and only 40,000 residents. We talk about all these new initiatives and they're just really not realistic if we don't have the budget to do them. What are some of the ideas about cutting that budget? So that's one thought. And my real suggestion here is, are we talking about county sharing? So for example, we don't have a traffic engineer. The county has a traffic engineer. Can we reach out with the county and try and get some kind of cooperative city and county overflow and cooperation on that so we can cut down a lot of these costs? With our $10 million budget, first, what are some of the ideas that the council has been floating to try and fix that, other than just contract salaries on the police department, which is the largest one, and when we're trying to expand the initiatives into community policing? So I don't see any answer other than community sharing, but county sharing. But what's the board doing, and what are you thinking?
So I will only speak for myself. There's a lot of thoughts amongst the council members. And this is a good topic. We don't have a lot of time left for this meeting, but maybe we can have another meeting fairly soon, because every time I discuss the notion of sharing services, or basically contracting with the county to provide services, there's a huge, I get back the feeling that there's a huge uncertainty or distaste for that notion, because there's a feeling that we would no longer have autonomy over those services. And I think it's true. If we abandon services, let's say we abandon policing, the county would pick it up by law. They have to. But there's another way to do that, and that would be to contract with the county, in which case we do maintain some control. I've talked about this from time to time. Fortunately, I guess would be the way I would say it, we haven't had to come to grips with this. The last really big downturn in our budget of this size was under Josh Cohen's administration. Mayor Buckley faced a little bit of it at the beginning of this administration, but that was because we were not keeping our revenue stream, i.e. property tax increases, in small increments, but continuous increments. The reality is, in my belief, is that we have too many employees. We try to do too many things. So today, when I read in the paper the mayor's request for the pilot, and part of the justification was because the city is supporting bomb dogs, my notion is, why is the city doing that? The state ought to be doing dogs. The state has 9 dog regions around the state, and we're in one of them. Dogs are expensive. The dogs take up staff time, but they also have all of the cost of keeping the dog, keeping them well, and then replenishing them, and they have to be trained and so forth. So, and the mayor mentioned the armored car. Why does Annapolis have an armored car? And that has to be staffed. Should we have our own SWAT team? So I think that within each of the city departments, we can look at what may well have come across due to mission creep and say, we just can't afford to do that. And if the state needs these services, then let the state pick up these services. But I really want to hasten to add, if you shift services to the county, your tax dollars, the county's going to want your tax dollars. So your city tax bill might go down, your county tax bill will go up. And if we shift services to the state, our city tax bill might go down, but our state tax bill will go up. We need to make some fundamental decisions about what kinds of services need to be done at the local city of Annapolis level with 40,000 residents. Can we maintain our own full service transportation system? Or ought that be something that really is a regional service? We had an initiative several years ago where Howard County and Prince George's County, part of Howard County, Prince George's and Anne Arundel County were working on a regional transit system, and that was going to depend heavily on our buses and our drivers, but was the right thing. I think that there's going to be pressure to look at every one of the services that the city provides. I'm sure there's going to be the ideas of taking a little bit away from each one of them and hoping the problem will go away. But the size of our deficit is bigger than our parks and recs. It's bigger than our transportation department. It's bigger than a good chunk of public works. A lot of that is paid for out of enterprise fees. It's as big as the amount of money we spend on a fairly large finance department. There are a lot of infrastructure services that we could contract, finance being one, planning and zoning being another, to do, but we have to pay for those services. And when you tell people that, and then you say, now you're going to be getting that from the county, they're going to say, no, we want to maintain control here. So it's not as easy as just slicing, because the costs get shifted elsewhere and the tax burden picks up there instead of here. So, I mean, I have been talking about us spending beyond our means for a long time. I think we've had a structural deficit for a long time. It is finally catching up with us. And quite frankly, it's catching up with us at a very fortunate time because this is an election year. And however we do door to door or whatever the substitute is, we're going to have to answer that question in our wards as we face our constituents. And we know we can cut the budget. There's no doubt about that. But no matter what we do, there's going to be a huge contingent who are going to lose a service that they want us to provide. And everyone will say, no, I use Pip Moyer. Why don't you cut the buses? They're running empty. Or why don't you get rid of this or that? And unfortunately, there's not a strong consensus on what we do to roll back. But we're going to have to do it. $10 million deficit, and the state cutting back on our pilot and other things. I don't know who had their hand up first, Ellie or Jane?
No, Ellie.
Oh,
yes.
I don't mean to
And
take
Ellie
it
is one of our new budget dynamos, so I want to hear what Ellie's saying.
Well, no, on an optimistic note, we've always been talking about our budget and ideas, and my frustration is that we don't have the numbers. We don't have any sort of efficiency ratings. Remember during the recession, the banks went through sort of the stress tests. So we are beginning that. We are introducing performance measures, and the departments will be measured for their efficiency because something is skew, I think. I mean, I know I get a lot of complaints from my constituents on certain services not being up to a capital city standards, but yet their taxes should reflect that. So there's something skew, and the only way that we can figure that out is if we have these metrics. So I'm really excited about that. And we also have the finance the Finance Advisory Commission coming up with another tool as far as evaluating our spending versus escalation and see if we're in line. And the third is that we will have a new financial program, Open Gov, so that we can compare our spending to other cities. So this is stuff that's really, really important. Otherwise, we don't know what we're cutting. No, I mean, I'm not speaking for the city, but we really need to know how much we are spending to do certain tasks, and then confidently reduce accordingly. So it's all good timing during a very unfortunate time.
So
And
what
Fred-
Ellie is referring to is the spending affordability model that the state has and the county has. And the Financial Advisory Commission has been looking at that. We have a corollary effort going on in planning and zoning with the fiscal impact analysis model that has a lot of similarities with the spending affordability model. And I would really wish we had that in place already. I would really like it to go in place as soon as possible, but the machinery moves slowly. But Jane, did you have a comment?
Well, I just want to maybe round out this discussion. First, I just have to say Ellie has made the point that we have a lot of studies of what things should be done, especially in transportation and pedestrian. They just sit on the shelf because we study it and we find out what should be done, and it never happens. And now the new answer is, oh, we're waiting for the traffic engineer. So I said to Stuart Pittman, right when he was elected, excuse me, could you take us in? And he said, oh, you probably think your taxes will go down. And I said, no, I would expect them to go up, but at least I'll get the service. And I think the traffic engineer is a really good example. We got a temporary crosswalk at Baker's where someone was going to be killed. And it was probably going to be somebody with a stroller. And because no one was stopping and the pedestrian traffic was getting bigger and bigger at that corner. Now that's a temporary thing. It's supposed to be a bump out. It's going to remain a temporary until there's a traffic engineer who can do the study. So yes, we're paying pretty hefty taxes, but, and I don't want to be picky, but this is just such a perfect example. We don't get the value. And I don't know why that is, but I would love to have Public Works say to the county, we need 2 days of your traffic engineer, come on over to Chesapeake, figure it out. Tell us we can go ahead. But I just feel like the residents more and more have a sense of urgency that is not being heard at or felt at City Hall. So
I think you're right, Jane. I will say that one of the pleasant outcomes of the Forest Drive Esports sector study and the follow-on after the council didn't accept that study was the task force and was pulling state, county, and city traffic people together. And there was a dialogue that ensued. Surprisingly enough, the county people like the city's traffic processes. And so I think that kind of cross-pollination is almost inevitable. That we're going to have more.
If we've got the process and they've got the personnel, that seems like a marriage made in heaven.
Well, and they have a built-in advantage because they have some economies of scale that we just don't have.
Yeah.
And we're just more and more. But I have to tell you, it is the pushback that I get from you, my constituents, about wanting to maintain our autonomy. That is one of the things that has been a roadblock. I was in a meeting in a different context, and we were talking about using a state facility for hearing administrative things. And several of the people in the meeting, including a well-known city lawyer and some high-level city staff people, oh, no, we wouldn't want to go outside of the city. So it is going to be something that all change really comes out of sort of cataclysmic kinds of events. And I think we're facing a cataclysmic event. I just want to warn that shifting the service to another governmental entity will also shift a large amount, if not all, of the tax burden there. So if the notion is that we want to pay less taxes, that's not going to do it. Jane, you're saying your notion is you want better quality services. That may or may not happen. We'd have to find out. We'd have to figure that out. That's why I kind of like the idea of contracting with the states or other entities rather than just abandoning the service, because you always can retreat if you contract, and you can retreat if the contract isn't cost effective. But just saying we're no longer going to police and cut $22 million out of our budget, pretty drastic step. So we are over our time. I can stay as long as anybody wants to, but I had high hopes that we would end on time. I certainly will stay as long as people want to ask questions, but otherwise I think we can let Julian, and we need to give Julian thanks for his yeoman service. He keeps all of these audiovisual Zoom meetings going like a champ, and makes it easy for people like me to hold these kinds of meetings. So we really do appreciate that service, Julian. But
and thanks to the city employees for hanging in. Very helpful to have you guys here.
It was very fortuitous. I don't think they expected as much airtime as they got, but we're happy to have it. All right. I think it is time to say goodnight. Now that I have this facility, I'm going to be doing this much more frequently. Budget is certainly going to be another one of the meetings. Comp plan is going to be another full-time meeting. And you can send your requests to me for things you want me to put in these meetings. So Alderman Payon, we're not asking for a vote to adjourn.
Well, that's what I was going to do. Move to adjourn. Get out of here.
Do I have a second? All those in favor, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you, Ron.